Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Raising Confident Girls. I am your host, Melissa Jones, and I'm so happy that you are taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode. We have had so many guests lately that have been so amazing. And if you missed last week's episode, check it out. I've been thinking this since the beginning of when I started the podcast of bringing on a girl. And this would be like a monthly episode where I bring in an actual girl who is of different ages. And Ariana was our guest last week. She's an incredibly insightful 14-year-old. And we talked about all the things from anxiety to challenges she faces. And she is an OG Girls Positivity Club girl and just an incredible human. So if you missed last week's episode, check it out after this one because you will not be disappointed. She shares insight that a lot of adults don't have. So I just love it, bringing the girls on and giving you a glimpse into how they think about things. So that is something that's going to be coming. And I'm going to, like I said, have different girls of different ages share their perspectives on things so that you can hear from other girls as well, because I think that's super valuable for us as parents and caregivers of girls. And so I have some new guests coming up, and I thought I would pop in for a solo episode because it's been a few episodes since I've been able to do that. And this topic, I really wish that we didn't have to talk about because it's the one that we all dread as parents, and that is helping your daughter through heartbreak. And these are things that aren't necessarily family heartbreak. Yes, they could be, but what I'm referring to is things like friendship breakups or friendship dynamic shifts or crushes that don't work out the way your daughter plans, or an actual, relationship that doesn't work out and that they're heartbroken. And, these are the hard parts of parenting. And I hope that I can share with you some tips and insights that'll help you and your daughter or the girls in your life move through it with a little bit more ease. I think these times are never easy. And obviously, every girl is different. Every situation is different. But I think there are some universal things that can help. And so I would love to be a resource for you and give you some of those ideas. Before we get too deep into the episode, I want to remind you that the best compliment that you could possibly give me and the Raising Confident Girls community is to share this episode with another parent or caregiver who it could help, because that is really the point of this podcast, is to help empower you to raise these confident girls, because if you listen, you do believe that raising confident girls will change the world and will make a more positive world. And I hope that this is a go-to space for you, that you can come and get some wisdom and take what works for you and try it out. And, let me know anytime at girlspositivityclub@gmail or on any social media. Just let me know what works for you, or if there's any way I can help, or if you have any, ideas or challenges that your daughter's facing that you would need some help with. I would love to chat with you and possibly do an episode topic about it so that I can help more parents too, because that's always the intention of this podcast, is to help as many parents and caregivers of girls as I can. So if you think about it, there are lots of different examples of heartbreak that can happen in girls' lives. One of those is friendship dynamic shifting. So I remember I've had this happen lots of times, but there was a girl who in one of our clubs who came in crying one day, and she was just crushed because something really tragic had happened in her friendship. And it may not seem like a big deal as an adult, but to them, this is what's heartbreaking. one of her friends decided to hang out and play with someone else at recess. And, you know, that to them is pure rejection. So I would see this all the time at recess where there would be friendship dynamic shifts. And a lot of times the girls don't communicate this with the other girl. They just start ignoring her or they start avoiding her or something like that and excluding. And this is especially heartbreaking when it is your daughter's main friend group and the people that maybe she thought were her closest friends. And it turns out that their interests have shifted or they just wanted to start playing with other people. And they're not always the best at communicating how they're feeling and that they want to branch out and start meeting other people and things like that. What typically happens is, like I said, they just exclude or they make excuses or they just start eventually spending less and less time with a certain girl. And I've heard lots of parents talk to me about this, about friendship dynamic shifting and how maybe their daughters didn't see it coming. It just happened all of a sudden. Maybe it was due to a sleepover, or maybe the other girls have gotten interested in a certain activity that your daughter may not be as interested in, or whatever the case would be. Sometimes there's a new girl that comes in and then that shifts dynamics of friendships. But this girl in particular came in very upset and in tears, and she was feeling lonelier at lunch because the lunch table had changed. They were old enough, so she was 12, and they were old enough to start having group chats. That was something that their parents all allowed. And she felt like very excluded in that way and just didn't really know the inside jokes and things like that. And she wondered if she could ever feel safe in that friendship again, or if she should leave the friendship. So she was really heartbroken by how she was treated because she had always been in that friend group. And then all of a sudden something shifted. There was no fight. There was no falling out, nothing that she could predict. And then all of a sudden things started changing. And that was heartbreaking. And so she was talking about it and just said that she didn't understand. She felt like something was wrong with her. She didn't know why all of a sudden they didn't want to be friends with her. She thought she did something wrong. And there really wasn't any specific reason. And she was afraid to talk to them about it because she still wanted to be friends with them. So that is one example of a heartbreak that can happen. And then also when all of a sudden a friend group starts excluding one girl or a group of girls and they say mean things. And that was something that another parent of an 8-year-old reached out to me about, where she said that other girls they just started acting differently, and her daughter didn't really agree with the way they were acting. And so she said something to them and they were like, well, you're not really our friend anyway. And so they said like a really mean, rude thing to her, and she thought that was her core friendship. So that was heartbreaking. And then when they start to get crushes, and it may not be reciprocated, maybe that person doesn't see them in that way, or maybe your daughter, the girl in your life, goes a little bit overboard with showing her affection for that person, or not necessarily affection like physical, but maybe, writes a note or has a friend ask, do they like them? And then maybe there's a rejection there, or no, I just like her as a friend, or maybe she is, starting to have those crush feelings and then the other person isn't, meaning like they just want to hang out with their friends and they're just in different stages. And then in an older grade, maybe they are actually dating and they are having relationships, and maybe they're even together for a long period of time for their age. So, for example, I know a teenager who is 16 and was with a boy for a year and a half. And in their life, that's a really long time in a teenage relationship. And so there was a breakup and there's heartbreak on both sides. And so those are just different examples that are really common of examples of heartbreak when they're growing up. And same thing as they're getting older too. It doesn't necessarily have to be with crushes. It can be a best friend that maybe she thought she had, and then maybe something happens similarly to what I was describing in the beginning with the younger girls. And it can cause them to come home and go to their room and slam the door, or it can cause them to come home in tears and not know what they did wrong, or it can cause them to just have these really just sad feelings or frustrated or anger. And, really it can be very confusing to know how to support them through these things. So these are problems that parents typically have when these situations can come up. Because, and I talked about this on a TV segment I just did last week, actually, where something really common to say is we think of it in our parent brain or in our adult lens. And to us, it may not seem like a big deal. So it's really easy for us to think, oh, you're going to have a lot of, crushes, or you're going to have a lot of relationships, or you're going to have a lot of friends. Friends come and go. It's okay. Just get over it. Or you'll feel better in a couple days. And the fact is, they don't always. And it can be like kind of like a mourning period for a while in friendships or even crushes that weren't serious to you, but to them they were. And it's really hard if we minimize their pain. So if we say, it's just a friend, you can make another friend, that can make them feel really unheard. So that's one problem, is when we make these blanket statements to them, like, oh, you're young, there are plenty of fish in the sea, or you're young, you'll make lots of friends. She wasn't a real friend anyway. And although that may be true, because maybe the person was super unkind and didn't align with their values and wasn't their true friend, blanket statements like that and minimizing their pain don't really help them. It just makes them feel unheard. And then the other thing that we can typically do is we can rush to fix it. So we can say things like time heals all wounds, or, we can rush to, oh, well, let's call her mom and see what really happened, or let's see what we can do. Maybe I can, call the teacher and see if this and that can happen, or maybe we can have them come over and we'll solve it together. And although those things are good, well-intentioned things and good ideas, they don't always help them work through it themselves. And yes, you can be a support to them, but it's really easy, and believe me, I know, to want to jump in and fix it for them and kind of rush them through this whole process of feeling the heartbreak. And then there's not really a roadmap. Like, there are a lot of parents who don't know how to navigate it. Maybe they've never faced that, or maybe your daughter is a deeper feeler than you are. And it doesn't mean that you don't have, good feelings and like good, not good feelings, but like, emotions, but maybe she feels things super deeply. I know I was a very sensitive kid and I'm a big feeling person, but not everybody sees things that way. And especially if your daughter is that way and you're not, or it could be the opposite. Maybe you are a deep feeler and they seem to be moving on quicker than what you realize, even though they're still hurt and they might be kind of bottling things up or not getting it out, and it bothers them, but they're just choosing to express it in a way that maybe you wouldn't. And one example is like anger. Sometimes when anger comes out with things like this, they want to get revenge or they want to retaliate. And you're like, that is not how we raised you. This is not a family value. This is not what we do. But for some reason, they just feel this frustration and they're obsessing about it and having these strong feelings in a way that you wouldn't. So there's really not a set roadmap, unfortunately, of how to navigate every situation with your particular child. And so those are some things that, or saying things like get over it. Those are problems with those types of reactions from parents, and why they fail is because the girls don't feel seen, they don't feel heard. Maybe you mean to support them, but things like that, those types of ways of handling it don't always help them. Even though you can be well-intentioned and really think that you are helping, sometimes they can react in a way like you're on the other person's side, or you're just not seeing it in the same way. So here's some tips that I think can help you navigate through it. And as usual, you know your child best, and it's going to take some experimentation and you putting your own twist on it. But these are some ideas, and I broke it down into different age levels too, to give you some ideas and also some conversation starters. So the first one is to normalize and name the pain. So when they're going through something, even if you don't agree with it, even if you think it's silly, even if you think they're overreacting, it's to help her see that hurt is valid. It is normal. I've heard lots of psychologists and lots of doctors and lots of therapists talk about this, is normalizing their feelings. they are having a normal reaction to something heartbreaking. And although it may not seem heartbreaking to us, for them to feel sad after a friend is rude or excluding them or has gone off and started hanging out with someone else instead of them, to feel sad is a normal reaction. And so we need to normalize that it's okay for them to feel sad. It's okay for them to feel frustrated. It's okay for them to feel anger. And really, it's the way that they process through it and the way they handle it that matters. And having those ways to express it and to get it out is one of the most important ways that we can support them. And so helping her see that her hurt is valid and giving her words for it. So when they're little, so when they're like 6 to 8 years old, for example, um, if you think about an example of when a girl might be around 7 years old and then her best friend says that she doesn't want to play with her anymore. And, your daughter might come home and say, she said she didn't want to play with me anymore. And then I cried. You could, while maybe you are doing your check-in when they get back, when they get home from school, when they get back from, whatever activity, when they share that with you, you could say something like, I've been sad like that too. Something like that's happened to me too. So it's validating their feeling, normalizing their feeling about it, because if someone does say they don't want to play with you anymore when you're young, that is very hurtful. And so you can say something like, do you feel sad? Do you feel mad? Or do you feel something else? So giving them some options of like, how are you feeling? And it's giving them that moment and not judging the way they're feeling because they might be mad about it. And I think it's really easy for us, especially with girls, to be like, oh, don't be mad. It's okay. And to try and smooth it over. But it is actually natural and normal for girls and any gender to have every emotion. And so obviously, we don't want them to do something violent when they're mad and things like that, but there are healthy ways that they can express it and handle it. But in my opinion, we don't ever want them to feel shame for feeling all of their emotions. I mean, there are obviously healthy ways to handle them all, but I think that we need to validate and make them feel like it's normal to feel mad or sad or frustrated, even at a young age, and then to talk through how they can manage that and how they can handle it. So the first step is to help her name how she's feeling. And then when she gets a little bit older, and let's say, for example, your daughter comes home and says that someone teases her at lunch and, says something that's a joke to everyone else, but it makes her feel left out because she didn't really think it was that funny. So this could be a time when maybe you're driving to an activity or you're driving home or you're on a walk together. And she shares this with you and you could say something like, can you tell me more about what you're feeling right now? Can you tell me more is always a good thing to say because most of the time they just want us to listen. They don't want us to jump in and offer advice. They just, especially at this 9 through 11 age, they're in between that young kid and the older kid age. And so they're trying to feel out like, I'm still little, but I'm getting older. I'm trying to navigate friendships and how they're changing. So being teased about something, and maybe your daughter might feel a little bit more sensitive about that. So asking her if she can tell you more about what she's feeling is always really good. And then stop and listen and try not to interrupt. And then as they get a little bit older, that 12 to 14-year-old age, you could, think about a time where maybe a middle school fight, let's say, for example, not a fist fight, but like an argument that maybe your daughter and some of her friends got into. So maybe at lunch, for example, this happened when I was talking to some 12 and 13-year-olds. They were talking at lunch about what they were eating. And they were kind of disagreeing about whether or not they could eat certain things and what was healthy, what wasn't, things like that. And then it got into a weight conversation. That's a very touchy subject, especially at that age. And it really bothered your daughter. And maybe she stayed up, she was in bed, like thinking about it, not necessarily maybe all night, but it was really weighing on her. And, at bedtime, maybe she shares that with you. And it's you saying that, like, yeah, that really stings when they say that to you. Like, that's really harsh when they say whatever it was. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a lunchtime thing, but just something that comes up in conversation. And then you could say to them, like, what best describes how you're feeling tonight? Like, how does, they might roll their eyes, but you can say, like, how does your heart feel? Like, what are you feeling right now? And so they can say, I feel really betrayed, or I feel really left out, or I feel like I don't agree with what they're saying, or whatever it is. They may not be able to name exactly the feeling, but they can describe it. And then as they get older, like in high school, that's when normally there's a crush situation, that, 15 through 18 age, there might be a rejection. I remember when I was young and I liked this boy and he was like a star athlete and I felt like very invisible to him, but somehow he found out that I had a crush on him. And I never really intended on acting on it or like asking him out or anything like that. But I saw some kids like all huddled around him and I could tell they had told him because they were looking at me and they were laughing and things like that because I was quote unquote way out of his league, in their opinion, meaning like I wasn't anywhere near his league. I was below him. And so it made me feel really sad. And it also made me feel embarrassed because then I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I, you know, why would I like someone like him? And that was when I was really struggling with my own confidence and things like that. I know that's not true. Today, there's no one above anyone else, but in the social ranking back then, that's how I felt. And so I do feel like, I felt really alone. I remember feeling really alone and really rejected and isolated. And so you could say something like, if you could describe your feelings in 2 or 3 words, what would you say? And so I would have said isolated, embarrassed, left out. Like those would have been my words that I would have described. And I even felt embarrassed to talk to my parents about that because I knew that they didn't approve of me dating. I think I was 15 at the time. And I knew I was under the age of when they wanted me to date. And so it felt very big for me to tell them something like that. But this could be like if you have tea together or if you have just a nightly ritual or something that you do together. Maybe you do go for a walk. Maybe you do go for a drive or you go for ice cream and you can just tell something's off. Or maybe you do go up to her room or you go into her room and you sit on the side of the bed and talk. And then you just ask, like, well, how would you describe it in a few words? And then maybe that could lead to them telling you more and just saying something like, I'm sorry that happened. That's hard. Like that, you don't deserve that. And that's really hard. It's really easy for us to be like, oh, there'll be other boys. Don't worry about it. You shouldn't even be talking to boys anyway. Like things like that really shut them off. So it's really helping them express how they're feeling and validating that. And helping them name their pain is really important. And then the second tip is to teach them emotional literacy. So what that means is like kind of like a map to their inner world so that their feelings become manageable. So here's what I mean. When they're little, when they're under 8 years old, I know that we don't have time to make charts and things like that, but you could even find like draw on a piece of paper faces, like a sad face, a happy face, a angry face, whatever. You don't have to have a ton, but you can draw happy, sad, mad. And you can say which face matches how you feel right now. And then, so it's helping them name it and helping them visualize it. So that they can express how they're feeling. When they're a little bit older, it could be because a lot of times, even with anxiety, you can feel it in your chest or tension or stress. You can feel it in your chest. You can feel it in your stomach. You can feel it in your heart. Sometimes you can feel it in your shoulders. So it's asking them where in their body they feel the hurt. If they feel anything in their body, like asking them about body cues, is a really good thing to do and to teach them as they're getting older. And then as they're getting to that 12 to 14-year-old age, it's introducing a quick like emotion check where on sticky notes, she writes or draws the feeling she's having and sticks it on her mirror, or she writes about it in a journal. And you could do this at any age too. And if she likes to draw, if she likes to sketch, she can draw it. You could ask her to draw a picture of what she's feeling that day and express it. I've done this a lot with girls, and I know it sounds like so basic, but abstract art or realistic, but mainly abstract, especially. They don't have to be a perfect artist. You can just have them draw something if that's a good expression tool for them, and then tell you what does this drawing mean to your feelings, like how explain. um and that's really been very effective, especially as they get older. They really think about the colors they use and things like that. And yes, I know you're not going to do that every single time. It's not like you're going to carry around a sketchbook everywhere, but it's really helpful if you are at home and you do have a little bit more time to help them. It's just another way. And then as they get older than that, as they're in those 15 to 18-year-old years, it could be encouraging them to journal about it. And I believe you can journal at any age, but it could be something as simple as, today I felt blank, and they just fill in the blank because blank. So it can be very simple, and you can even verbally do this. If you have a girl that doesn't like to write or draw, you could just say, today I felt, and you could model it for them too. Today I felt stressed because I had a lot of projects in my work to do today. Or today I felt sad because I was thinking about, whatever. You could do examples. So you could say, what's one sentence that could capture today's events and like how you felt? So you can word it in a different way. You could say, like, describe the sentence of how your day went today. And it could say, same thing. Today I felt this because this. Very simple. And you could do that at any age too. So any of these I feel like could be adapted at any age. And again, you just have to try them out and know that if something doesn't go well one time, then it doesn't mean that it'll never work. Like, sometimes you have to approach it at different times, depends on the timing, where you are, what their mood is, things like that, and how deep they're into the emotion of what they're feeling. And then the third tip is to create simple and safe rituals. So this is like a pairing of, care and conversation. And it's kind of like that emotional first aid kit. And so, maybe you have a ritual, you have a routine that's a snack and share when they're little. So I remember when I came home from school, my mom would greet me and we would talk a little bit. We had these stairs in our house and we'd sit on the stairs and chat. And a lot of times we would have a snack together. So one of my favorite snacks was apples with cinnamon on it. It was just like a treat for me to have that. And so she'd put like a little bit of sugar with it too to sweeten it up a little if the apple was a little sour. But we would have like cinnamon apples and we would just chat about the day and just about anything that came up. And so that was a huge support to me, even at a young age. So a snack and share is one thing. So after she picks a snack, you ask 2 questions. How was your heart today? And is there anything I can do? So, how was your heart today? Oh, my heart felt happy. My heart felt full. My heart felt hurt today. That would be the younger age. And then as they're getting older, that 9 to 11 age, you could create a cozy corner, which is a special spot in your house where you have a special pillow or a little nook where there's 5 minutes of just listening with no electronics at all. And you say something like, what's one thing that you wish someone understood about you today? And so that's a way to open up these conversations. And just remember that these are all when you're noticing heartbreak. So these are great check-in things in general, but I would tweak it if you're just going to use some of these ideas as a regular check-in, because they may not always be able to answer all of these questions, but this is something that at 9 through 11, if they're feeling that heartbreak, it's going to help them name, like, what's something that you wish people understood about you today. And maybe in the friendship example, it's something like, I wish they understood that I can also play with the new people too at recess, or I also like to make new friends, or I have other interests besides this, or I wish they understood that if they would have just talked to me, then I wouldn't have felt this hurt. And I just felt ignored when they didn't say anything to me. So it really can open up a really good conversation. And then when they're 12 to 14, you can do a warm drink or a cold drink debrief. And so it can be a tea or a cocoa or whatever kind of drink your daughter likes. Maybe it's a lemonade or just a special little drink. where you have a 10-minute just like check-in somewhere in your house. It could be at the kitchen table. It could be just anywhere. It could be outside. And you could do a scale. So on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 3, how heavy did that disappointment feel? So this could be same thing, like a friendship, something went on in a friendship. It could be a crush. It could be anything, a dating thing. Even at a younger age, there are some girls that start to, want to have, just someone that they like. And other girls, they wait until much later. So it really just depends. And obviously, just each person is different. I, in the classroom, always liked a 1, 2, 3 because sometimes when you give a big scale, there's so much in between that it's kind of hard to know where they're at. So I always liked a 1, 2, 3 in the class because 1 is like not good, 2 is in the middle, and then 3 is I'm good. And so those were just really easy, manageable numbers for a scale, but you can do it however you want. And then the 15 to 18 would be an evening unwind. So a 15-minute, no distractions, no screens, chat where you're sharing your yays and nays or your highs and lows. So we just call that, if you haven't heard me say that on the podcast before, Girls Positivity Club, we always say, what are your yays? Those are your highs. And what are your nays? What are your lows? So the girls name that from the beginning. So it's just common language. So something you could say was, what was your best moment today? And what was your hardest thing? So you can start with the hard. You can ask them, do you want to start with your yay? Do you want to start with your good? Or do you want to start with your hard, your nay? And they can choose. Anytime you can let them choose how they're going to talk about something, they feel really empowered and they feel really in control when their emotions could be feeling really out of control. So that's a really good thing to do. And then the fourth tip is modeling healthy coping. So showing her in real time how you handle letdowns is really important. So at that 6 to 8 age is when you can start to teach breathing techniques. So this could be a bubble breath where you breathe in and you imagine with them that you're blowing imaginary bubbles. And you could say something like, you're blowing your sadness away with me. Ready? Here we go. And then you breathe in and then you pretend like there are little bubbles and you're blowing them out. So you could do that, and then you could do lots of different ways. You can look up like all kinds of breathing techniques. And a lot of times the girls will learn these in school, but bubble breaths are good. There are all kinds. So box breaths are always good because they can draw a box in the air. They can breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4. You can do it however you want. And they like drawing in the air. They like to pretend. They like to do birthday candles, however you want to do it. So that's a really good technique. And then, like I mentioned earlier, that 9 through 11, drawing it out. So having them sketch a quick sketch of how they're feeling. It could be a comic. It could be whatever type of drawing they like to do. It could even be abstract. If they're not really confident in their drawing, because that's not the point. It's not about, and even saying that to them, it's not about being a perfect artist. I just want you to help me understand how you're feeling. And then you could do it too, and they might get a little laugh out of that as you're doing it. And you can model these with them, and you can do these alongside them too. That way they feel very connected to it, and they don't feel like this is just something you're having them do. So you could say something like, want to draw how the day made you feel? Do you want to, express it in that way? And then that 12 to 14 age, you could do a reset walk where you say, I need some fresh air. And would you like to join me on a 5-minute walk? Something like that. Or I need help with a little project outside. Can you help me for a few minutes? And maybe while you're doing whatever it is, you say, let's walk and just take in the fresh air. And let's just talk about what's on our minds. And so if she doesn't want to go first, maybe you just talk about what's on your mind, and then just give her the space to do the same, or ask, do you want me to start or do you want to start? So again, it's putting the ball in their court, like helping them realize that they can decide if they want to go first or if they want you to go first. They might just feel like they need to get warmed up a little bit. So that's always good, a reset walk. And then 15 to 18, there's a voice note vent. So they can record a 1-minute note about how they felt. And they could say, today I felt upset because blah, blah, blah. They would just get it out, and you can do the same. Maybe you model it first, and then encourage her to do it too. And you can decide if you listen to it or if they just get it out and then they delete it, however they want to do it. Or maybe you listen to each other's notes separately. And you can ask, do you want to record a quick voice note about how today's day went? I know it was a little bit tough. Do you want to try and do this? I heard about it, and I thought it could be a cool way for us to, communicate, or for us to have a way for you to get things like this out. And yeah, and they might like it. I did this with some girls before where they vented and like got out their frustration, and then they also recorded an encouraging note to themselves. So it was very powerful, and I didn't tell them what to say. I just had them go off and record it, and then I sent it to their parents. And the encouraging part, because the other part was just getting it out. And so yeah, it was really powerful. So maybe even try that. Like, now because we have to be our own encouragers, and you could say, now let's do the opposite. Let's try and flip it and think, how could we reframe this? How could we flip it? How could we not ignore the feelings, because these are all valid feelings, but what would I need to hear in this moment? And then maybe you could record a message for her. She could record one for you. And then maybe you could do it for yourselves. That would be really powerful. So you could try that. And like I said, mix and match. You can try these at any age. And then you just adapt it to whatever would work for your daughter. And then the last tip is to encourage reconnection and small wins. So gently guiding her back into that social confidence with low pressure invitations. So for example, if they had a friendship falling out and they want to maybe try again with that friendship group. It doesn't mean that they have to break up their friendship forever, but maybe they want to kind of slowly try and get back and see if the friendship can work again. When they're younger, when they're 6 to 8, they can make a friendship craft, like a friendship bracelet are really popular with that age. And they could maybe make one for themselves and then make one for the friends that they want to reconnect with. And you could say something to them like, who would you like to give a bracelet to this week? And so maybe they do that for a couple weeks in a row, or maybe a couple days, or maybe if there's something else that they like to do, maybe it's bake something, maybe it's make a different type of craft, maybe it's making bookmarks because she knows that her friends like to read. So any of those types of things are a nice way, like a gift is not a way to buy them, but a way to, especially if it's homemade, like a friendship bracelet or something they make from their heart, even if it's a little card of encouragement or just anything, it's a great way to kind of break that ice and try again with a friendship group that maybe they felt like they had a falling out with and they wanted to try again and see if it could work. And then the 9 to 11 age would be a kind note. So helping her pick like a friend to leave a sticky note of encouragement, or saying something like, I miss hanging out at recess, or I miss playing with you at recess, or I miss doing whatever they used to do together, or just something like that. That's a kind thing to say. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be, I miss you, but it can be something where you're like, I'd love to read in our book club again together sometime, or I'd love to, whatever it is that they used to do with that person. And maybe put it on their desk or put it on their locker. And maybe it's a note of encouragement. It's just like, I hope you have a great day today. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, I miss you, or can we talk? It can be more like, I hope you have a great day. I hope that something good happens for you today. It can just be a kind note with no expectation. And then just leaving it where the friend would find it on a lunch bag or somewhere where they would look. Could be a really nice thing to do. And then when they're 12 to 14, kind of trying out a club. Or an activity. So Girls Positivity Club, of course, is what comes to mind, but any kind of club or activity where you offer to sign her up for one new activity. Maybe it's art, maybe it's chess, maybe it's sports, maybe it's something like Girls Positivity Club as a fun experiment. Maybe it's a cooking class. Maybe it's just archery. It's anything that she would like to try. So asking her, what's one new thing you'd like to try just once to see how it feels? Maybe it's rock climbing. Maybe it's a certain type of sculpture. It can be literally anything. So just asking her what's one new thing you'd like to try just to see how it feels. That's obviously a safe and approved activity. And then 15 to 18, it would be a reconnect text. So this would be helping them reconnect with a friend. Maybe there's been some time that's passed and they want to reconnect with that person, and just helping them draft a low-key message that's like, hey, do you want to go grab, something to eat, or a Starbucks or something like that, that maybe she's drifted away from. So maybe inviting them to get an ice cream or get a Starbucks or go for a walk or go do an activity that they used to love doing together, and just extending a hand again to try again to see if there's something that they could salvage in their friendship. And you could say something like, is there someone you've been thinking about reaching out to again? So, obviously this has to be reciprocated. It can't be only one-sided where your daughter's doing all of the giving and all of the reconnection, but the other person might want to reconnect too, and they just need your daughter, the girl in your life, to let them know that they also miss them as a friend. And I would say the friendship piece is one of the biggest things that is heartbreaking for girls, because girls need friends. And it doesn't mean they have to have a huge friend group, but friends are such a core need. And not that boys don't need them, but it's just something that is so important to them. And when they're feeling disconnected from friends, it can make them feel very isolated, very just unmotivated. It can make them feel sad. And so having these conversations and check-ins and ways to help them through this heartbreak of a dynamic and friends shifting, or even just moments where maybe they do like someone, there's a crush, maybe there is some kind of a breakup, when they are old enough to date, and just helping them through that, and also knowing when to move on. I think that's something that's kind of a bonus tip, is knowing when a person is right for you, whether they're a friend or more than a friend, and when they're not, and helping them feel what they need to feel and then move through it in a healthy way. And reconnecting or trying to make new connections with new people. And then the outcomes of this, if they try these things and they work, so mix and match and try them out and just see. And like I said, these are things that are going to take some time for your daughter to, get used to, and for you to get used to. And you might find one that works really well, and that's your thing. You might try a variety of them, and maybe your daughter might like variety of strategies to use too. So what this is going to teach her is emotional resilience. She's going to learn that hurt doesn't have to define her, and that it doesn't have to last forever either. And also there isn't a timeline on it, and she can move through it in healthy ways. A stronger self-worth. So validating her feelings is going to help her feel from you that she matters, and even from herself that she matters. And then healthier friendships. This is going to help her either reconnect and mend friendships that she used to have, or move on and make new ones. And this is going to help her build that social confidence. And it's also going to deepen your bond with her. So whether you're a parent, a caregiver, an auntie, whatever role you have, you're going to be that person that they know they can walk through heartbreak together with. And it shows them that you are forever on their side, and that you are a safe place for them. And that's ultimately what we want for our girls, is that they know they have a safe place and they have a warm adult that they can go to. And these different strategies are ways to show them that. So just remember, like I said, try some of these tips and see what works. And for different situations, there could be different tips that work. So just to recap, normalizing and naming the pain, and then teaching her emotional literacy. So how her inner world is feeling and how to manage it. Creating those simple and safe rituals, modeling healthy coping, and then encouraging those reconnections or new connections and small wins, noticing the small things that happen that are positive. And I think that when you choose one of those, just choose one. I know it can be overwhelming to have a lot of tips and a lot of steps, but if you look in the show notes, we have a cheat sheet for you where the tips will be listed. So feel free to download that and use that to help you so that you don't have to memorize all these things from listening to the episode. And then we also email it. So if you'd like to be on our email list, just send me a message on social media or girlspositivityclub@gmail and share any of these that work for you and your daughter, because anytime they're sad or anytime they're going through heartbreak, every moment you sit with her teaches her that she has the strength to heal and thrive on the other side of it, and that she can get through anything, and that you are there to support her and help her through all of these heartbreaking things that can happen as they're getting older. And so I hope that this was helpful to you. Please, like I said, share this episode with someone that you think it could help, and keep raising those confident girls even when there's heartbreak. And I know our hearts break for them when these things happen. And if you need anything at all, I'm here for you. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls and reach out if you need anything at all. I hope you have a great week ahead. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.